What's up, y'all? Slow Wolf. So happy Valentine's Day, first of all. Second off, this is a video that I decided to do that was extremely important, okay? This video is about your ancient boundary stone, okay? So what does that mean? It was in Proverbs, in the Bible, Proverbs 22:28, okay? What does this mean? Well, it's attached to a lot of different things in the Bible, okay? But what I'm going to start with is I believe it means two things. The first thing is that you can tap into it, and it means don't negate your roots, okay? So how you'll see some people who are of native culture or certain cultures that will tap into, not like meditation music, but will tap into their roots even if it is learning something about it, okay? So you learn where your roots come from and you ground yourself in your roots, okay? All right. Most importantly, what it means is don't lose your ancient boundary stone, which sits in your chest right here, okay? It is a stone. I believe this is why when we bury people in graveyards that we leave tombstones, that they have a stone that they left behind with their name on it, that also is a reflection of the stone that they had here, okay? Having some coffee today. What does that mean? Well, how do you lose that, okay? You lose it by breaking one of God's commandments and doing something deplorable and detestable to God. Murder is something that causes this, okay? This is what happened to Cain, I think. It may be that that did not happen yet, but that seems like when he struck Abel, Satan was thrown out of heaven because he worked through him and his pride, and he lost his ancient boundary stone, okay? And it could be that I'm going to use that as an example, but I don't know for sure if that happened. You possess an ancient boundary stone in your chest. You lose it if you commit murder, or you are involved in it, or you're involved in something that God sees as completely detestable. It just falls out. It is something ancient and archaic that goes way, way back, okay? Way, way back. An ancient boundary stone is something that is set up by your ancestors. Well, what does that mean? Well, your ancestors set up your roots, okay? If you do something that's detestable, like spilling the blood of the innocent, or stealing, or committing adultery, those type of things, your stone will fall out of your chest and you feel like you are empty, okay? It will feel like you are cursed. Well, you kind of are. And this is something that I believe is permanent. There may be, people say, well, you know, with Jesus you can be redeemed from the law. But this is something that's ancient and archaic that I did not notice in the law when it came to what Moses told Israel, okay? So, other things probably cause this that are in the dark, like severe psychic attacks on someone. I had somebody that tried to smash into my energy and do some crazy black magic on me, and I saw that one day they looked normal, and about a week later, they looked like some gothic mess where they had you could tell that boundary stone fell out, that they lost what they had in their chest, okay? They lost it. So they are not grounded in their roots at all, and they can't find it after that, okay? Here's an example. Here's something I also wanted to state. If you are blind to it with someone else you are in a romantic relationship with, you will be blind until you see it. So you can be with somebody and not know that their boundary stone's missing until you finally realize that when you connect with them, part of your boundary stone fits in them. So it's weird how that works. Imagine that there's a boundary stone that's halfway in your chest and halfway out. And if you romantically connect with somebody, it fits in that empty spot. Partially. So it makes them feel a certain type of way. That doesn't mean that you're meant to be with somebody. That can be, you don't see it until you start seeing that their behavior is more erratic. Maybe their morality is a little off, okay? The longer it's missing, the more screwed up you become, okay? That's something I wanted to say. I found something online, introduction of 1 Kings 11, and this was just something I found. This chapter relates to the false steps Solomon took, notwithstanding all his wisdom, in marrying strange wives and worshiping other gods. Okay? 1 Kings 11, 1 through 8. Upon which the Lord threatens him to rend the kingdom in his son's time. So, 1 Kings 11, 9 through 13. And he raised up adversaries against him, Hadad, Rezon, and Jeroboam. I believe that's how you say it. Okay? So, when you have your boundary stone missing, God will bring adversaries against you. And that's just something that I've noticed, okay? And that's something I noticed here. Is people, their boundary stones fell out when I got attacked, bro. Because I got attacked with some heavy stuff here. And people, their boundary stones, people died, bro. Like, people spiritually died here, okay? So, 1 Kings 11, 14 through 26, of which last an account is given, and of his being assured by Ahijah, I think that's how you say it, the prophet, of his having 10 of the tribes of Israel given to him, which Solomon, having notice of, sought to slay him. 1 Kings 11:27-40. And the chapter is concluded with an account of Solomon's death and burial. Okay? Solomon's boundary stone fell out when he worshipped other gods. Okay? He did something that was detestable to God. He was given all this wisdom, and then he worshipped other gods and married strange women. Okay? Saul's stone fell out when he disobeyed God about the cattle in 1 Samuel 15. Something I wanted to actually say is, if you look in that text, he's speaking to Samuel and he responds with, "All right." Saul answered. For some reason that sounded a lot like Cain, for some reason, like there was some sort of pride there. Okay? Like there was pride in Saul, and that's where I saw it. So sometimes you can see that somebody will disobey God and be prideful afterwards and it falls out. I think that might be it too. I think it's God's decision if it falls out or not. Okay? And there was something that he said in there to Samuel where he was asking him to come back and worship the Lord your God. He didn't say to worship the Lord or worship the Lord my God, your God. So there was something about that I saw where Saul, he had this thing, okay? It was indicating that it wasn't his God, but it was Samuel's God, which is very strange if you read it closely. 1 Samuel 16, verse 14, I think this is when his boundary stone fell out. And God sent an evil spirit upon him to basically torment him, okay? And that could be what happens to people when their boundary stone falls out. That God will send an evil spirit to torture you, okay? Because your boundary stone fell out. There's divine judgment for it. You have to deal with this now, okay? Well, I said before that Sodom and Gomorrah seemed to be a situation where everybody had this mark on them and the righteous left and fire and brimstone happened, okay? Does that mean that everybody in Sodom and Gomorrah had sexual immorality and their boundary stones fell out? Which facilitated something dark and demonic like a possession. Sounds kind of like that. Maybe I'm on the right track there. Maybe I'm not. But it sounds like everybody's stones fell out in that town of their chest, their ancient boundary stones, and they are all about sexual immorality and this and that, and all this stuff went down, okay? So, what is this all about? Okay, an ancient boundary stone, I thought about it for a while, and I tapped into my ancient boundary stone where I started learning about my roots, my native roots, okay, Cherokee, Oklahoma. I started learning about what practices did they have when, you know, they, back in the day, okay? Now I'm talking way before Wild West days. When people say, the ways of your ancestors, okay? I also believe that if your stone falls out because of something you did, that your ancestors will depart from you. This is something people might be able to relate to a little bit. Say you did something really bad where you killed somebody, okay? And your boundary stone falls out, okay? All of your ancestors, from your grandmother who may have just recently passed, all the way back to your earliest ancestor, will depart from you, okay? They will depart from you, and you are an empty vessel at that point, which God will send an evil spirit upon you to torment you. Okay? So that's how I saw it. I was like, okay, well, when it comes to the murder thing, there's also, you look in the Ten Commandments, and it also indicates that anything outside of self-defense or war. Okay? So there is exceptions there, that if you're pushed into war, like, well, that's technically self-defense, okay? So you didn't commit an act where you murdered somebody innocent. You didn't even know who the person was on the other side of the battlefield. You're just at war. So that was something that crossed my mind, okay? So the Ten Commandments. I'm going to go over this real quick, okay? Because it seems like this seems pretty accurate to me, okay? The Ten Commandments. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have strange gods before me. I looked at that, and I looked at Solomon, okay, and what happened with him, okay? Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, okay? Well, and a lot of that resonates with what Jesus said, where he said, you know, you can, God will forgive you for speaking against the Son of Man, but will not forgive you for blaspheming against the Holy Spirit, that type of thing, okay? And that's like, okay, you've done something so bad that you blasphemed the Holy Spirit. And it could be something that was so deep and so far out there that your boundary stone just fell right out and you don't know who you are anymore. That significant event in your life is kind of like your mark in a way, where everything goes back to that and you can't seem to, it's on you, okay? It's on you, like white on rice, bro, it is on you, okay? Remember to keep keep holy the Lord's day. Well, does that mean that we have to go to church every Saturday, Sunday, that type of thing? Well, maybe it does mean one thing. If you do something that is completely unholy on the Sabbath, that your boundary stone will fall out. Okay? Whatever that means that is unholy, that means it has to be way upside down. Okay? Now, it could be something that's just deplorable to God. I think it's actually up to God on some of this, on how your boundary stone, if what you did and the circumstances, okay? Honor thy father and mother. Well, that seems to be pretty straightforward, okay? Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. So if you cheated on your wife, or you cheated on your husband, your boundary stone fell out, and that's where it all stemmed from, okay? That's where it all stemmed from. So you can repent, you can get back into the light, but I don't think you get that boundary stone back. I think no matter if you convert and you have eternal life with Jesus, that boundary stone is a one-time deal. It's a one-time deal. If you keep it, you keep it. If you lose it, you lose it. I believe it wasn't stated. I'll go over Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John again to see if I can find something. But I think it's a one-time thing that is old and archaic, that is within all of us. It's a stone that is within all of us. And it will fall out if you do something deplorable to God. And I don't believe you can put it back in. It could be, maybe you can find that later on down the road. Can you find your ancient boundary stone, pick it up, and stick it back in your chest? Maybe not. Maybe when it's out, and you're screwed, okay? Thou shalt not steal, okay? It's pretty straightforward. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. So you shall not be a false witness, or it will fall out. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods, okay? Which basically, coveting means you desire to have your neighbor's wife or desire to have your neighbor's goods, okay? So I looked at the 10 Commandments. That's where I went to. Why did I go to the 10 Commandments versus the parables of Jesus? Why? Because Proverbs, where it was mentioned about the ancient boundary stone, it was there. It was in Proverbs. It was in Old Testament. So I decided to go to the Old Testament and look around. Yes, Jesus can redeem you from the law and you can still get into light and go to heaven. But your boundary stone, I believe it's an old thing, okay? So you can still, walk with Jesus, but your ancestors might be long gone. Like, they don't want nothing. It's not, maybe they don't want anything to do with it, but maybe it's just a spiritual law. If you do that, you lose them. You lost it, okay? So I done thought about that for a while, okay? And I thought about it. But it says, do not move an ancient boundary stone set up by your ancestors. There's an English Standard Version. Do not move the ancient landmark that your fathers have set. Well, what does that mean? Some people could see that literal, that there's an ancient landmark like in mine. What's an ancient landmark? Okay. Well, mine might be, I'm Native American, so totem poles. People might see that in a physical situation, but I believe that is a spiritual deal. That the ancient landmark that your fathers have set is the stone that is passed down through their offspring that is embedded in you, in your chest. Okay? Basically, do not move an ancient boundary stone which your fathers have placed, okay? So, your ancestors have placed that in you, okay? By passing the baton down, okay? So, think about how far back that goes. It's pretty far, okay? Well, and if you want to tap into that ancient boundary stone, what does that mean? Well, you can have some people that have a past culture of being Nordic, or a past culture of being Native American, or Spanish, Mexican, even Canadian, or there. Does that mean to study your roots and to be grounded in them? I believe that if you study your ancient boundary stone, that you become more protective of it. Something of that, okay? So, They also say, in the earliest times of Israel, the property of families was divided and marked by boundary stones, okay? Well, that could be something else too. So it may be a bullseye effect, where it does mean certain things that are physical, but there's spiritual things about it. Imagine that there was a get-together where 4 people jumped this dude, okay? This is an example. I don't know. I'm just using an example, okay? 4 people jumped a guy, okay? And he died, okay? Where they beat the crap out of him until he was dead, okay? The people that did it, when they did what they did, their stones fell out of them, and they walked away from that situation like there's something missing from me that used to be there that I can never get back. And they always have this empty hole in their chest, trying to figure it out, okay? And some people may say that this isn't right, okay? And some people may say, when moving the stone is moving the church of the living God. It's a very non-specific thing that I've been seeing. Do not move an ancient boundary stone set up by your ancestors. The occurs in 4 other places in Scripture, often with dire consequences. Judah's leaders are like those who move boundary stones. I will pour out my wrath on them like a flood of water. Hosea 5:10. So there's certain things you see that could mean physical property, but I believe it's also a spiritual thing. Where if you are marked with the curse of Cain, is that different from your boundary stone falling out? It very well could be. Why? Well, because there's more than just one commandment. There's 10 of them. So, there was a lot that I saw on like Water Street Church too, that was talking about physical boundaries, like a real fence is built on your half of the boundary. You pay for the damaged oats, you pay for the visit by the fence viewers, you pay for the trucking of the cows and the feeding and milking while in the pound. So there's different things that people had on here. I saw it in a more spiritual than physical thing. Well, because why? Well, you also have to kind of see it like this too, okay? Here's an application to the physical in my life. I was screwed over. I was not told about who my parents were, and I was screwed over pretty bad, okay? Where my inheritance was taken, but also my real mom and dad's house was sold out from under me and gone, okay? Does that mean that they moved an ancient boundary stone? Kind of sounds like it. That ancient boundary stone is probably supposed to be, if that was considered an ancient boundary stone that your father set up, which was a house that he built, okay? It was sold out from under me and gone. So you took it from the person that it was supposed to be handed down to, okay? That was one way. This is an example, okay? And this happens all the time. So there's another one, through holy joys, okay? What does that mean? Remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. What were the ancient landmarks and why weren't they to be moved? Okay? So this person, with this website, similarly, I find a sermon published in 1886 in which the ancient landmarks were noble patriotism, religion, and learning, okay? As recently as this semester, a college student asked me, but what about the verse says what about the verse that says we aren't to remove the ancient landmarks? He had heard that verse quoted often in defense of the traditional lifestyle practices of his background, okay? So this is a kind of a confusing thing to see, okay? Deuteronomy 19:14. You shall not move your neighbor's boundary mark, which the ancestors have set, in your inheritance which you will inherit in the land of the Lord your God gives you to possess, okay? That sounds a lot like my example with the house, okay? Cursed is he who moves his neighbor's boundary mark, and all the people shall say amen. So, that also relates to somebody's physical land. But it could also be a spiritual thing. Well, somebody can't just rip out your boundary stone. Let's just be there, okay? If we're talking at a spiritual thing where you have a stone that falls out of your chest, okay? So, I believe there's a bullseye effect with this proverb, that you can apply it in multiple ways. Some people might say that I'm wrong, okay? And that's okay. This is just how I'm determining it or interpreting it through my walk and what I've seen, okay? So if you go, say you live next to your neighbor and you guys share, a fence line, okay? You move that fence line, you're cursed for it. How? I don't know. I've never seen that before, okay? So I don't know everything, okay? I don't know. But a lot of this is the landmarks or boundary marks were placed in Israel by God. to provide each tribe their inheritance in the promised land of Canaan. Within each tribe, families and individuals also receive land whose boundaries were marked with landmarks. Okay? Why would God curse a person who moves a neighbor's landmark? Because it is a form of theft. If you shift the boundary markers, then you claim more land that was actually allotted to you, or than you acquired by purchase. So, this proverb seems to be, don't steal your neighbor's land, okay? Don't move an ancient boundary stone setup, okay? But I saw it as, if it's spiritual as well, and there's a bullseye effect, okay? And this could be on the outside of the bullseye, I might be way out there. I don't know. This is my interpretation. This is for other people to think about, okay? If I'm wrong, don't go publicly like rebuking me and this and that. Just, hey, this is how he interpreted it, and I interpret it this way, and we're cool. I don't mind. I'll tell you, you're probably right, and maybe a lot of us are right, and our bullseyes and our experiences are this and this and that, okay? What it says online, okay, an ancient boundary stone often referred to in biblical texts is a physical marker used to delineate property lines and territorial borders, okay? Well, it's one of those things I look at and I'm like, well, war has happened all over the world, okay? Boundary lines have been crossed because people have been invaded, okay? So you have certain boundary markers, okay? Physically. But I think you have ancient ones that your fathers have set up. So say my father set up a house, but it was never given to me like it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be given to me to inherit it as him being one of my ancestors, okay? And it was sold out from under me and gone, okay? Split the money and went off and had a heyday with it. There's the physical one. But it's a warning to somebody not to move somebody's boundary stone, which is a boundary marker, but it also means what? To me, don't do something that breaks a commandment that your stone falls out of your chest, okay? That you don't lose your ancient boundary stone, because there are people who will commit certain heinous acts in life that they feel like something's missing here now, and it all stemmed from when that happened. What event happened? So I saw it and was like, well, okay. And they were set up by your ancestors. So physically, that property line or boundary could be set up by your ancestors. Physically, this boundary stone was set up by your ancestors by handing the baton of the genetic by basically your lineage. So I believe it means something spiritual, but it also means something physical at the very same time. And some people may disagree with me, but it's like, if it is a spiritual thing, it was something that was old and archaic, that, well, Jesus, reiterated what God wanted you to do, okay? And obviously, you don't go doing something that's detestable against the Lord. He did not say anything about your stone falling out. So I'm not going to say, I'm going to try and detach this from New Testament, but I'm also going to look for answers for what I believe in the New Testament. And if it is that that's not true, then maybe it is just a physical thing, okay? But we're looking at Proverbs is a book of wisdom, okay? Well, it's wise to keep your property and not steal some of it and get cursed for it. It's wise, okay? It's also wise not to do something deplorable against God and lose your boundary stone that was set up by your ancestors. Because if you do something deplorable against the Lord, your ancestors will depart from you. Why? Well, maybe that's part of being cursed for it. And it's something that you can go and convert and walk with Jesus and start understanding the New Testament and His story and applying it to your life and living like a Christian or living in the light. But that boundary stone is still missing because you did something significant that God did not approve of, and that is something that is permanent, I believe. I've seen people where they've been wicked their whole lives and they've done things their whole lives that have been detestable against God. When I look over and I see somebody who's been maybe religious their whole life and has always walked in obedience, and they have that tap into their cultural roots that you can see. It's almost like they lose it and maybe you can see it, okay? And this is just me speaking in a bullseye term, okay? So I may have a whole bunch of people who are like, no, that's not how it goes. And it's like, well, I'm interpreting it this way based upon what I've seen through my lens and what I've seen experienced to me. I still have my boundary stone. I haven't done something that is super detestable to God. The 10 Commandments, okay? Look at the 10 Commandments. I really haven't wanted somebody else, my neighbor's things or anybody else's things or their women. I really just haven't been that way. He's with her. Okay. I don't really care. Like, oh, he's got a nice lawnmower. I don't really want it. I mean, it'd be nice if I can get my own. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where you look at the 10 Commandments and you go, okay, what does that mean? Okay? A boundary stone. A boundary stone is a physical and spiritual thing. Boundary stone marks, this is ancestral land, you don't move it. Does that also mean that, well, the U.S. shouldn't have been invaded and the natives shouldn't have had their land taken? Yeah, probably. So the U.S. is probably cursed for that, okay? Well, they are, because people always talk about it. This is stolen land from the natives, okay? It's true. So what else does that mean, okay? You also force their boundary stones, their physical boundary stones, into reservations. That's not good. So is this one nation under God's curse? Very well might be. Could be. So the boundary stone that is set is very clearly on the line that we are to love others, both believers and unbelievers, and our enemies as well. So the Church of Living God interprets it a little differently. That's from a website. So a lot of people admit that these boundary stone verses have been a real head scratcher. And finding out what was behind them is what got me started in this in the first place. Why was this so important to God back then, and why is it important to us today? Well, maybe I just explained it. I don't know. But it's one of those things where you see, it's like, does disobedience and losing your stone have something hand in hand? Well, and can you be forgiven of that and have it put back in? Well, that's up to God, I'm sure. It could be that there's cases out there where it fell out and God put it back. It could be that it's a permanent law that he's had ever since. It's old. The Old Testament's old wisdom, bro. It's old. It's old. So this is something archaic, bro. It's something that's ancient. It's an ancient boundary stone. So what's that mean? Well, things that are passed down to you through generations, like land, you don't move that or take that from people. You just stole something, okay? The person and people who stole what they stole knew what they did. They took it, sold it off. Okay, they didn't even give my mom the money. They probably gave her some of it, but they didn't give her all of it. Turned around and started blowing it. Took my inheritance. Well, that seems like that's the same thing. You steal an inheritance, it's the same thing. They probably done had their stones fall out long before that. And that could have been where it actually fell out. Okay? Don't steal something that ain't yours. Okay? If that ain't yours, and like you know you could get away with it and do this, and like, I wouldn't do that. There's consequences for that. So it's like, well, how do we deal with that there? Okay? Well, WordPress.com. I'm gonna look at another thing. Okay? The Lord tears down the house of the proud, but he sets the widow's boundary stones in place. That's Proverbs 15 through 25. Proverbs 23, 10 through 11. Don't move an ancient boundary stone or encroach on the field of the fatherless. For their defender is strong. He will take up their case against you. Well, what's that mean too? Well, for me, I didn't really have a dad because my dad didn't really come clean to me about that stuff. Instead, I was in a surrogate situation, okay? So, I was pretty much fatherless through my life, okay? So, you move the ancient boundary stone and encroach on the fields of the fatherless, and what does that mean for their defender is strong? Well, think about how much God defends certain situations in life, okay? So people that don't have a dad, that you go and move something like their ancient boundary stone, like, you have to think about through God's eyes how he sees that, okay? Like, he's going to see that in a certain way, and I'm not God, so I don't know. But the defender is strong, and he will take their case against you. So God will take that person's case up against you and defend them, bro. Like 100%. 100%. He's got something personal about that, okay? He's got something personal about that. And cursed is anyone who moves their neighbor's boundary stone. Well, bruh, maybe there's examples that someone could provide to me that make a lot of sense. And that could be that there's someone that makes some sort of comment maybe, or makes a video that goes, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And they kind of hit the bullseye, or hit the like direct on, or they hit it somewhere in there where I'm like, oh, okay, this, and this, and I start to put stuff together. Well, don't be moving the boundaries between land. Why? It's stealing. So that seems to be the number one thing I see. But I seem to also lean towards the spiritual thing. That if you do something, if you kill somebody, if you kill blood of the innocent, you are marked. You're marked, bro. You got the curse of Cain on you, bro. Let's be honest. And here's something I will also say, is a lot of people that are wicked that do that type of thing, well, they hide behind that. Well, God's got this mark on me where I can't be touched and I can't be killed and this and that. And it's like, well, hold on, okay? That's true. Mark of Cain, curse of Cain, you can't be killed because he wants you to suffer through the curse, okay? But if you keep on doing what you're doing, God's not going to give you a free pass, okay? I don't think God just gives a guy a free pass, or a woman a free pass who murdered someone who was innocent. If you kept doing it, maybe you go from marked to wanted. And something I thought about was like, well, is God going to sit back and go, oh, go ahead and just, run through the wickedness of the land, do whatever you want to do? I don't think so. There's still full circles in divine judgment. So there was something in there that said that if Cain were to be touched, that the person that did it would have to bear that curse like 6-7 times. Okay? So, say somebody who has the mark of Cain, they went and killed somebody else. Or killed somebody else, and killed somebody else, killed somebody else. Do you think God's going to sit back and just go, oh, go ahead and just do what you want, and this, that? No! You have to understand, God ain't just going to let somebody with the mark of Cain just run about. You are to go build a town, and you will do what I tell you to do. And it seems as though Cain followed those orders and wandered and built the town, even though it got destroyed, bro, by the flood. So, we look at that, and it's like, well, just because your boundary stone falls out, or you're cursed with the mark of Cain, or you have this and this and that, it's like, well, where does that all tie together here? Because from what I've seen, we've seen people that have killed a bunch of people and they get put to death, bro. And that is what it is. And it's not determined by a court of law. If you took stuff into your own hands and turned around and went and killed the person, well, then that probably means, yeah, then that's going to happen. But if you were put to death by a court of law, that seems to be something completely different, okay? So, just some food for thought. I'm going to do some more on this. I just got to do some more research, some more investigating, and digging into the Old Testament a little bit more. So, until next time, I'll catch y'all later. Love y'all.